As some of you might have noticed, Eddsworld has had some brushes with television as of late. Last year the show was added to the Animation Plus lineup, with episode compilations airing on live TV, and this year the show was added to the streaming service Tubi. Reactions to this news have been mostly positive. Some people don't see the appeal in watching out of order compilations, and if that's your preference then I'm not going to argue with that. But I do want to talk about a small handful of comments I've received on my channel from people who believe that Edd didn't want his show to be on TV. I'm in no position to tell you what Edd would have wanted. Honestly, I think you should be skeptical of anybody making such claims with any kind of confidence, but this is clearly a concern for some people, so let's unpack this topic for a bit. I want to make something crystal clear. Edd's work was shown on TV when Edd was in charge. As I mentioned in my climate change video, the BBC ran a report on Eddsworld in 2009 using clips from one of his episodes. A year later, Edd worked with the BBC to animate a Mitchell and Webb skit for the BBC website. While it might have been a web exclusive, this is no less television adjacent than the compilations on streaming. This wasn't even the first time Edd made a deal with a TV network. Apparently in 2007, Channel 5 paid Edd 50 quid to do some artwork for a TV documentary. That's pretty neat. Also in 2007, the CW contacted Edd asking him if they could use one of his Eddsworld videos in an episode of their American reality TV show Online Nation, and apparently Edd said yes. Now, while 8 episodes of Online Nation were produced, the show was cancelled halfway through its run because nobody watched it and it was bad. The 4 episodes that did make it to air were uploaded to YouTube, but having gone through the uploads myself, I can tell you that Eddsworld did not make the cut. And then in 2008, Edd was approached by an animation company about collaborating on a series of shorts for kids aged 9 to 11. Edd said yes to the collaboration, so the company showed off his work at Cannes and managed to get some interest from Cartoon Network, Paramount, and Jetix, a defunct TV channel that I am particularly nostalgic for. Once they had network interest, Edd signed a contract and started developing the idea with hopes of creating a pilot and eventually working with a team of animators. Nothing came from this deal, and from what I can tell, this DeviantArt post is the last we heard of the project, which is a real shame. Any way you slice it, Edd was not ideologically opposed to having his work shown on TV. Eddsworld had been shown on television before, and Edd consistently expressed interest in working with studios to bring his work to big name channels. Heck, we've not even mentioned Super Average, a Tom and Edd collaboration, and from what I can gather, there were always ambitions for that show to air on a proper TV channel. But hang on a second, if there were so many cases of Edd wanting to make it to TV, why do some people think otherwise? I'm guessing this conception stems from a line in the RIP Edd Gould video, quote, "We watched him turn down a lot of business opportunities, work, and even the chance to have a TV show a couple of times, because he knew it would drive a wedge between him, you, and the show." I think that is totally valid. You don't keep a project going for a decade unless you're genuinely passionate about it, and Eddsworld was basically always the focus of Edd's output from what I can tell. He had other projects, animating for numerous channels and of course the aforementioned Super Average, but he always came back to Eddsworld, a freedom that can only really be afforded to independent creators. Contractual obligations, like those presented by working in network television, could get in the way of producing an independent YouTube show. Some people would prefer the route that gives them freedom over their own time. The bureaucracy of studio work may also be a deal breaker for those who prefer to exercise unbridled creativity. I mentioned before that I imagine Edd as a kind of creative workaholic. People like that might have an idea and then work to get that idea into the world instead of umming and ahhing about making it conceptually perfect. That's not exactly how things play out at big TV networks. There are plenty of creatives who feel that the studio system stifles creativity, so they'd prefer to hone their skills and make high quality artwork away from outsider interference. Legal ownership is a whole other can of worms that's made more complicated when there are more parties involved. Notice that we don't have HD versions of Climate Change or the Mitchell and Webb skit. It's presumed that because they were commissioned by TVE and the BBC respectively, Eddsworld has little control over those videos. Chances are that they won't be re-released or monetized in any meaningful way. Control over your own art can be highly desirable, and if a TV deal takes away some of that control, then the trade-off might not be worth it for some people. Also, and I say this with complete respect, I wouldn't call Edd a businessman.
One company, when asking about like doing a show for them, they asked him, what efforts are you currently making to monetize, to make money off the show? And he just replied with, what does monetize mean?
Though not well documented, Edd apparently signed a contract with multi-channel network Machinima, a now defunct business that had a reputation for taking ad revenue while doing basically nothing for their signed creators. I can't imagine this was a particularly lucrative deal for Eddsworld. That experience would surely influence decision making when hit with later business opportunities. So yeah, Edd did turn down the chance to have TV shows because he felt like it would get in the way of making Eddsworld for the Edd heads. I wouldn't be surprised if, for instance, that kid's TV show he was working on fell through for this exact reason. From my perspective, that feels fundamentally different to letting a service exhibit your work elsewhere. It's probably more analogous to Edd expanding his platform from Newgrounds to YouTube, if you catch my drift. If you left a concerned comment before, then genuinely that's okay. I hope I've managed to put your fears to rest. This video is certainly not a definitive statement of intent on anybody's behalf. There are plenty of reasons to be excited by the prospect of developing an idea with studio backing, just as there are plenty of reasons to be an independent creator. Both pathways to success are valid, and if a stranger chooses to pursue either pathway, within Eddsworld or anywhere else, then I am certainly in no position to argue with them.